Hello YouTube. Here are some very important questions that you need to ask when you're interviewing your next realtor. Because buying and selling real estate is one of the largest transactions that you may occur, and it is very important that you find someone that you can fully trust throughout the whole process. Hi, my name is Fyfe, and I'm your local Calgary Realtor. And I want to make sure that if you're going to trust me and commit to my videos, you're legitimately learning stuff as you go. So moving forward, I'm expecting to hear a few of these questions pop up during our initial Zoom consultation in the near future. Now, if you're interested in a consultation because you plan on buying or selling a home here in Calgary, feel free to book a time slot directly in my calendar link below. So before we get into this, I really want to say that the purpose of asking these questions is not to look for the most perfect put together answer. It's to develop a deeper conversation so you can flow through topics naturally and gain a better understanding of how they can handle certain situations. Not every personality type will work well together. From all of this, you want to simply get a sense of the person if they're a good fit or not. If you start to look into the body language, the tone, and the speed of their answers, you can start to develop your own opinion about that person who very well could be representing you in that next transaction. So during the initial conversation, please make sure to ask that said realtor if they're a full-time or part-time agent. About 95% of the time, they'll tell you that they're full-time, where the odd 5%, who would be a very honest person by the way, will tell you that they're part-time. Now, being a part-time agent is not a bad thing. I know part-time realtors that are very good at their job, who are very knowledgeable, and can represent clients very well. There's pros and cons of both, really. A full-time realtor should invest a lot more time and effort into you yourself and the industry as a whole, as they are not distracted by other things. Regardless, it's a good conversation opener, and just because someone's a full-time agent doesn't mean they're really that good. Second, I think it's pretty fair to ask them how the market's doing. Now, hopefully you've done a little bit of research on your own, but again, you're not looking for that perfect answer. Some realtors will spit off some facts about the market, others will answer from their personal view of how they've found success or have been beaten by the market, whereas some may actually read the reports and talk about the hard numbers, which may or may not be useful to you. Now, in my experience, how is the market is a super loaded question because it's really different for everyone. Hopefully, that person will answer with the statement, well, are you a buyer, a seller, or an investor, as it varies for each. If someone answers with that in mind, at least you know they can accommodate all aspects of real estate. It's fairly simple to answer with fluffy words talking about things that are slowing down or the market being super hot. But it's quite difficult to answer more micro market questions, like which areas are good to invest in currently, why or what is going on in different sections of Calgary, should I sell or should I buy in this area? Try to find someone who can actually develop a deeper conversation so they can continually teach you the things while they guide you to a conclusion. This next one is an interesting one and something that I learned when I was a sales rep for Milwaukee Tool. Go Milwaukee. And that would be, would you consider yourself to be a good communicator? Now, most people will say yes, of course, but again, you need to look between the lines of the actual answer itself. I think that some people will actually be thrown off by this question, as it's really hard to answer because all of the proof is in the pudding. Are their emails short and to the point with no explanation? Do they always reply to text messages with one-word answers? Do they actually take phone calls regularly to properly explain things, or are they just too busy? Unfortunately, you won't be able to really get a good idea of how someone communicates until you spend a bit of time with them. Communication is one of the most important things to consider when working with a realtor. So make sure to try and figure out what type of communication style they have in the beginning stages, because when shit hits the fan and stress is sky high, bad communication is very, very annoying. This next one is a bit harder to simply talk about, and sometimes you really don't even see the way people negotiate with other realtors. But I would ask a realtor that I'm interviewing, how good are you at negotiations? Now, most people will say good, but also find it difficult to provide tangible answers, which is fine, because I'm not asked this question often either. But if someone can actually answer this and explain a buying situation or a selling situation with confidence, then you could be in the clear. Now, negotiation can be very difficult, and it's also dependent on how much the client, or aka you watching this video, is willing to risk during the negotiation process. Sometimes it's not worth going that extra mile to save the extra few bucks in a situation if you know that there are other parties interested as well. I've worked with very pleasant real estate agents who I'm excited to work with again because they're fair, they communicate well, and they somewhat are stern with their client demands. But at the same time, I've also worked with realtors who I hope I never have to deal with again. don't hire one of those realtors. This is where looking up their Google reviews or their Facebook reviews may shine a light on who they are. For the most part, reviews are all pretty good. If there are some negative ones, it has to be a pretty bad situation for someone to actually take the time to write it up. But I will be the devil's advocate and say that there are a few situations that are just outside of the realtor's control, but they will still get the blame at the end of the day. Maybe because it was the lack of education at the beginning of the process. Lastly, I would definitely ask a very vague question of why I should hire you. If someone can recall and recap all of their previous answers while putting a spin on it to how it could relate to you personally, jackpot. They listen, they can digest, and they can even come back to tell you how your questions, which they've already answered, are the most important reasons as to why you should hire them. Many people will come up with many different answers, and that's fine. My biggest advice for someone who is setting up the interviews is to try and find someone who puts you first, who will educate you through the full process, and someone who can communicate via text message, phone call, and email, and who also listens to what you're actually saying. I've met some very good but busy realtors who seem to have a bit more of an ego. They like to share all the great things that they've done over the past 12 months. While that's important, it's not all about them. It's your house and it's your future. So with all that being said, I hope someone decides to ask a few of these questions during their next realtor hunt. Please make sure to have some fun with this. It does take a few years and a lot of conversations to really start picking apart people's answers and figuring out if they're being their true selves or if they're just giving you some fluffy stuff that they want you to hear. If you want to test these things out and you're looking to get into the real estate market here in Calgary, feel free to book a time slot in my calendar linked below. I try my absolute best to provide my clients and viewers with A+ service. This is such a referral-based business. If I'm not doing my absolute best on every transaction with every client, the likelihood that I will succeed in the future is not as bright as it could be. I really hope that you enjoyed this little rant about the questions to ask. So until next time, peace.